Before we begin, please help grow this channel by subscribing, giving us a like, leaving a comment. It feeds the algorithm. And everybody, of course, share. Thank you so much. On the last Q&A, someone asked me about tokenization. And it's really important for everyone to have a basic understanding because tokenization is being invisibly implemented throughout the financial system. And quite frankly, it's probably going to impact all of us. Now, many of you might think that you do not or cannot understand tokens. But what if I told you that it's really quite simple? So let's just begin with the definition. Tokenization is the process of representing claims digitally in the form of tokens. You can't really see them. I mean, remember, this is my Bitcoin thing. You can't really see them, but they're held on a programmable platform. In other words, a token is a representation of an asset that can be chopped up, traded, bought, and sold digitally, and then carry it with you on your phone. Now, keep in mind that the easier it is to spend money, the more money will be spent. And frankly, the harder it is to keep track of it. For example, we started out with gold coins, but then they created cash because that was a whole lot easier and more convenient than coins, and ultimately that went away. And then we had the cash, and then what did we get? Debit and credit cards. That replaced the need to carry that physical cash. Well, tokenization will take this and can also take any tangible asset like property or collectibles and convert them into digital tokens that can be traded with just a few clicks. And what do you got? Boom, nothing. This shift brings convenience and speed for sure, but it also creates a sense of detachment from the real world value of what's being traded. When you had an ounce of gold in your pocket and you spent it, you knew about it. And so what all of this does is it increases the risk of overspending and overtrading. Tokenization really seeks to digitize dynastic wealth like real estate, rare collectibles, and gold. So which institutions are leading the pack with tokenization? Who is that? Oh, the usual players, BlackRock, JPMorgan, and Fidelity. And that's just mentioning a few because they're all rushing into it. And if you know that they're rushing in, I don't know, what do you think? You think they smell an opportunity for themselves? So you might ask me, well, Lynette, I can't see this. Why should I care? And by the way, I can't see it. So how does this affect you personally? Remember the World Economic Forum prediction that by 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy? Well, tokenization might be one subtle way of making that happen by getting you to give up your equity willingly, one itty-bitty trade at a time. So let's take a look at how the system is set up to lull you into that false sense of security. In order to get adoption, they need to keep things looking as normal as possible. So first, let's consider the parallels between tokens or digital assets and the existing financial system. Now, here's something that's worth noting. In the U.S. Treasury's own report on tokenization, currency, money market funds, and bank deposits aren't labeled as money like you would think of them. They're called money-like assets, not actual money, just money-like. Interesting, Anyway, that subtle shift in language tells us a lot. And tokenizing these fiat products would feel almost seamless to the average person because it's what they're already used to. See, keeping it normal. The only real changes needed, swapping physical currency in circulation for digital equipments like, I don't know, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Wait, a CBDC in the US? Well, obviously it's not official yet, but, most likely to be on the horizon in the future. We'll see. But what really caught my attention is what the tokenizable assets are. These are physical assets like real estate, rare collectibles, and gold. Now, imagine turning into tokens. Now, imagine turning those into tokens. Digital representation that can be easily bought, sold, traded, or transferred. It's a game changer, and frankly, not always in a good way. If you want to take a closer look at this slide and what it means for you, just reach out to one of our strategy specialists. They'll give you all the time you need. They'll walk you through it and answer any questions and help in any way. So, what is dynastic wealth? Well, if you've been following me for a while, you've probably heard me talk about my dynastic wealth stool. Dynastic wealth isn't just about being wealthy. It's wealth that's lasted at least 300 years through a family line. It survives currency collapses, hyperinflation, and shifts in political or economic power because it's tangible and universal. And here's the key. One leg of that stool is what enables you to accumulate the other two. And the three legs of dynastic wealth are real estate, again, rare collectibles, and gold. I know I'm being redundant. I just want to make sure you get this because of the three, gold is the anchor. Gold has held its purchasing power for thousands of years, even as fiat currencies collapse in a blaze of hyperinflation. So that's what positions you to step in and acquire those other assets when they finally become, undervalued, right? It's going to flip-flop. That's the structure of dynastic wealth. Your foundation for building a legacy that can last for generations and you can't outlive. It's also the core of the sound money strategy, designed to help wealth shift in your direction as this currency reset unfolds. Now, let's look at how a token is structured because it's built on two key layers, the service layer and the core layer. Now, both layers really define ownership and custody. And we're coming back to that in a little bit. But you can never actually take possession of the token or the real asset behind it. That means that ownership becomes digital, distant, and in many cases, out of your hands. Now, tokens are governed by smart contracts, which automate the rules, and they're the ones that follow it. It's just a smart contract. It's an algorithm. It looks at payments, terms, and ownership. And here's where it really gets interesting, because ownership can be transferred in the blink of an eye. What a concept. This, if you miss a payment, you decide to sell or trade your token, boom, it's instant and irreversible. But don't worry, what could possibly go wrong? I'm sure there will not be any glitches. But now we've got to talk about this atomic settlement, because this actually means that every part of a transaction settles at the exact same time. No waiting, no undoing. It's done permanently. It's fast, it's final, and it's very, very new. Nothing to be concerned about, right? But here's the question I want you to think about. Could tokenization be used to chip away at your principal by making it easier and more tempting to spend the equity you've built? Well, how could they chip away at your equity without you even noticing? Well, they did it with inflation, right? But also now they're going to do it by breaking it down into tiny, teeny, bendable pieces and encouraging you to use them. That's called fractional ownership. And it means that your equity, your real wealth, is sliced and diced into bite-sized pieces. And since most people hold everything on their phones now, well, it becomes frictionless and dangerously easy to spend what was once long-term locked-in wealth. But, here's the question. When do you really start losing control? When smart contracts quietly transfer enough of your ownership rights away from you. Now, this is one of my very favorite. This is called composability. That means that large, complex systems can be built by combining small, independent parts. Sounds pretty flexible, right? Well, it also means that intangible tokens can be broken apart, mixed into complex bundles, and repackaged into new financial products. Wow. And just like that, voila, a fresh wave of untested fiat-based products enters the system. And you buy it because you don't even realize what's happening with it and what they're made of. But what this also does is threaten the global stability and quietly siphon off your wealth. Now, according to the Bank for International Settlements, gold held at home is the only financial asset that carries no counterparty risk. And by the way, no geopolitical risk either. But intangible fiat money-based assets, especially the new digital ones being developed, they actually carry a lot of counterparty risk. Let's look at just one of those risks that tokens add. What could those possibly be? Well, I don't know. How about complexity and opacity? These structures can become so layered with those itty-bitty pieces and technical that the real danger gets buried, hidden so deeply that no one, not even the experts, can see it coming. You remember 2008, right? Everything was fine with derivatives until it wasn't. And I don't just mean that you can't see it. I mean that the very people hired to manage these non-traditional opaque assets may not fully understand the risks either. All right, well, let's just layer in increased leverage on top of complexity and lack of transparency. Yeah, frankly, that's not just risky. It could very well be explosive. So what is leverage? It is when a company uses debt in relation to its equity, often measured by the value of its stock. So when stock prices are going up, leverage looks awesome. But when things turn south, it becomes a massive problem. Fast. All right, let's take a break here and connect the dots, because we now have a new programmable, complex, opaque, and infinitely leveraged fiat money product. And it meets something called, liquidity and maturity mismatch. Whoa, what does that mean? Well, here's what that means. You may want your money back immediately, and that's the promise, right? But the asset backing it, the one they'd need to sell to pay you, might take days, weeks, or even longer to sell. Remember the token's promise? Atomic settlement? Everything settles instantly across that whole entire transaction. But not all assets move at the speed of code. Physical assets like real estate, gold, and collectibles can't be traded in a click. Those are dynastic wealth assets, and while easily bought and sold, harder to do with atomic settlement. So what happens if there's a run on a bank that has tokenized your deposits? Frankly, it could trigger a fire sale of the underlying tokenized assets. Worse yet, you could face a bail-in where your deposits are used to stabilize the bank. And in a highly automated system, that could also set off an automated margin liquidation, a doom loop, where one sell-off triggers another and another to cover cascading losses in a failing market. As Warren Buffett once said, when you combine ignorance and leverage, you get some pretty interesting results. Yeah, I'd agree with him, because we've just walked through the ignorance part. Now, I want you to ask yourself, how much leverage is actually in this system? Oh, let's keep digging, because is there more risk that you need to know about? Heck yeah, and I'm not even mentioning all of them, just a few. And I often talk about how deeply interconnected our world has become, incestuously intertwined, right? And we are now witnessing the global doom loop unfold in real time. It's called contagion and interconnectedness. And in times of stress, those seamless global ledgers, everyone thinks is so fabulous. Well, frankly, they can become as destructive as a full-on deleveraging. That means selling, having to sell. Why? Because when trades go bad, they have to be unwound or sold off. And smart contracts demand atomic execution, and that means the underlying assets must be sold immediately. These forced liquidations ripple outward, dragging down all other assets other than gold. And yes, that's exactly what deflation looks like. And the only way central banks fight deflation, here we go, inflation. This is not rocket science. Let's be honest. The complexity, opaqueness, and leverage, well, this has all the hallmarks of the 2008 financial crisis. And we all remember how that ended. Now, let's take a look at the current ownership flow of intangible fiat money assets, because what you're seeing here is full leverage that Wall Street did on top of those subprime mortgages that, why worry? The banks would self-regulate. No problem here. Yeah, here's the test, right? Now, I've gone through this before. This is, again, something that you need to really be clear on, because this is the current legal ownership structure of all fiat money assets. Not gold. If you hold it, you own it. But with anything that's intangible, let's take a look at this, because the legal owners are the usual suspects, and they're all at the top, those big banks. But you, where are you? Oh, I don't know. Look down there. You're the beneficial owner, buried all the way at the bottom. But what you need to really be clear on is that every single entity in between the two, from the legal owner down to you, and most of them you can't even see because you're just dealing with one bank. Well, they also are legally beneficial owners of your equity, and they can use your equity over and over again for their own gain. And this is already a very complex and tangled web, and it's about to become, frankly, a whole lot more complex. Now, let me ask you this. Do you remember anyone going to jail for the great financial crisis? No? Well, that's right, because no one did go to jail. But do you remember what happened to your savings? Wealth transferred to the 1%. Same story in 2020. So here we are again. Is this the setup for the next massive wealth transfer? Because tokenization is set to take ownership and the transfer of ownership to entirely new levels. But here's the critical truth. You cannot convert these tokens back into the real underlying asset. So let me say this very plainly. Guys know it. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. Big banks and corporations are all in on the tokenization because they would end up owning and controlling the hard assets behind the tokens. At the same time, the ease of trading tokens means that these assets could be used as collateral to take on even more risk, even more leverage. Your wealth leveraged for their gain. It's a dangerously complex system operating inside of an interconnected world. Is this the new global financial system, and are we really ready? I don't know. But I do know this. You need to put your sound money strategy in place now. Now! Because I hope that you're beginning to see just a fraction of the hidden risks that could ignite the next crisis. And at Zang Enterprises, we specialize in helping individuals like you preserve and protect what you've worked so hard for outside of the system and being completely independent. So if they say jump, you don't have to say how high. Our team of experts are here to help you build a strategy rooted in physical gold and silver, assets that have withstood the test of time. And let me remind you one more time, if you don't hold it, you don't own it, no matter what the system wants you to believe. This push for tokenization is about more than technology. It's about access to real generational wealth, the kind that's been mostly out of reach for Wall Street and central banks. Now they're making their final move, digitized dynastic wealth, real estate, rare collectibles, and gold. Will this transition be smooth? Absolutely not. Got bold?